Get ready to find the quiet, world-shaking power you never knew you had. What if leaving wasn't a sign of weakness, but the most powerful method to show how valuable you are to God? You are going to learn why your absence creates a hole so big that it changes reality itself, converting indifference into passion and neglect into devotion. This isn't simply a message. It's a revelation about the wild power that lives within you. Once you get this, you will never look at yourself or the people you leave behind the same way again. They believe they could live without you. Nevertheless, what they are about to learn will shatter their world and propel you to heights they can only imagine. Power doesn't necessarily make a lot of noise. It frequently manifests itself in the calm, deliberate art of absence. You didn't simply go. You vanished with surgical precision, leaving behind a hole so deep that it changed the weather. There were no big departures or passionate ultimatums. There was such a deep stillness that it seemed louder than any goodbye. The absence wasn't a retreat. It was a statement, a quiet, seismic change that revealed your actual worth in a manner that no words could. You didn't have to shout to be heard. Your leaving was a symphony of self-respect that drowned out the sound of those who were used to hearing you. It was a masterclass in spiritual sovereignty, teaching that your tranquility was unbreakable and your energy was a luxury to be earned rather than a commodity to be spent. Each ignored message served as a sobering reminder of their irrelevance, an empty echo rebounding back from the barriers you created with sheer, unadulterated apathy. In their growing perplexity, they sought for you, their fingers clutching for the ghost of a relationship they had so carelessly broken. But every effort made the vacuum more worse, and the emptiness howled back with the might of their own negligence. You didn't simply leave. You took apart the illusion of permanence that they had so arrogantly erected around you. Not only were their emotional circuits messed up, it was rewired on a basic level that couldn't be changed. They thought you were a fixed point in their cosmos, like a star that never changed. You didn't simply take away your light when you disappeared. You destroyed their whole constellation, leaving them to face the darkness they had created. The consistent warmth of your energy and the unfailing support of your presence, which they used to take for granted, became the only thing they could think about. Your absence destroyed their entitlement and rebuilt it piece by painful piece into a frantic, yearning need. They now revolve around the memory of you, drawn to the exact quiet that shattered them, caught in a gravitational pull of their own invention. Your exit wasn't a juvenile fit or a planned move. It was a spiritual act, a heavenly rule of energy balance that was happening right then and there. This wasn't about anger or retribution, which are feelings that come from being attached. This was all about getting everything in line. It was the cosmos itself, through you, fixing a big problem. People who used to feed on your light, thinking that your inexhaustible energy was something they could simply have and always have, discovered the hard way that a force like yours never begs, never pursues, and never settles for being misunderstood. You left like a beautiful storm that disappeared over the horizon. Not diminished, but made better. Not lower, but higher. You didn't go away. You went up. That decision shook not just their feelings, but also the spiritual bond that had previously held you together. They had seen your might, but didn't respect it. Now they had to deal with the aftershocks of its leaving, which shook the ground of a world they had believed was solid. The empty area you left behind became haunting ground, a holy but scary place where people had to face the ghost of their own inadequacies. Their spirits now surround that area, drawn there by the weight of what they lost and what they decided to despise. They felt they had plenty time. They felt they were in charge. But those who are selected and live in harmony with a greater purpose never work within the limits of borrowed energy or broken timetables. You didn't make yourself smaller to make others feel better. You didn't change who you are to make it easier for them to handle. You didn't spend your breath trying to communicate your value to others who weren't spiritually ready to hear it. And at that last, irrevocable instant, you didn't simply go. You were the lesson, A lesson that was written in flames and quiet. A lesson they never expected, and one that they will always remember. The mind may prepare for disagreements, storms, or even gradual, bitter goodbyes with warnings and second chances, but nothing, absolutely nothing, can prepare the unworthy for the brutal grace of your leaving. Now they sit among the ruins of what used to be a place they made. They are in misery that no closure can ease and a wound that no apology can repair. And here's the lovely, terrible irony. The more they suffer, the more they respect. The defeat doesn't make people angry. It creates an all-consuming, desperate infatuation. They pore over every word and every time they shared, feverishly searching through their memories for a mistake, a hint, or anything that may explain their dramatic fall from grace. But there wasn't just one mistake. There was just the inevitable, terrible result of not recognizing greatness when it was standing in front of them, shining its light on them. You were not someone to be taken lightly, but they did nevertheless. They thought there would be another opportunity, another day, a time to come back. But you don't stay where you aren't appreciated. And your silence didn't mean you were open to discussion. It was the last loud closing. They believed you would be gone for a short time, a storm to weather and a feeling that would pass. They never knew it was the last sentence, given with the calm, unchangeable judgment of a supernatural court. No drama, no warning, and no second chances. It's just the deep sense of finality that comes with your energy departing their world for good. At first, they didn't care. Their egos protected them for a while. They thought they could replace the gap with diversions like additional people, bigger noise, and easier wins. But the stillness started to seep in, first slowly and then all at once, like a fog that made you shiver. It got into their heads, messed with their everyday lives, and made everything they used to like less interesting. Their days lost all color. The successes they used to celebrate now seemed empty and weightless, like echoes in an empty room. The truth, clear and undeniable, was always with them. What they had earlier ignored and thought was normal was never normal at all. It was the strength that kept their universe together. And suddenly it was no longer there. When they finally understood that you were serious and that you would never come back, their whole world started to fall apart. The weak edifice they had created around you, which was held up by your strength and stability, couldn't stand without you. They thought your grace meant you needed help and your quiet dignity meant you were weak. But you were the base. And when you departed, everything that was created on that basis crumbled. It wasn't only an emotional choice for you to go, it was a spiritual one, a return to cosmic fairness. You didn't just go. You took back every bit of energy they had previously thought they could use. You got back your essence, your frequency, your holy presence. And what you left behind wasn't simply empty space. It was a sound that would accompany them for the rest of their lives, like a yearning they could never satisfy again. This wasn't the end of a relationship. It changed my soul. A spiritual earthquake that shook the very foundations of their lives and revealed the flaws in their own personalities. They attempted to go on, to forget, and to cover up the hole you left. But the gap you left behind became a wholly empty tide they could never fill. And the more they sought to find someone else to take your place, the more they realized how deeply they had lost you. They don't blame you for it. In the most honest and deepest portions of their souls, people respect you for it. Because they lost you, they learned their most important and heartbreaking lesson. The lesson that you were never intended to be owned, simply respected. The lesson that being close to a chosen one is a gift, not a promise. There was no way to copy or replace your presence. It was like a holy code stitched into their inner architecture that they couldn't forget. Now, every minute of silence reminds me that you're not here. Every time there is stillness, it becomes a place where your energy is still felt. They look for signs of you in the new people they meet, the places they travel, and the noise they make to drown out the stillness. But you are both nowhere and everywhere. A presence that can't be copied, because you can't replace selected ones. You weren't just someone they saw or heard. They felt you. Your essence was written on their soul. And now, no matter how far they flee or how many stand-ins they attempt to put in place, the emptiness stays there and always will. Even though you're not here, your soul stays with me like a ghostly apparition, an unseen force that won't go away. The distance hasn't made their infatuation fade. It's simply become stronger with time. What they used to disregard now takes up all of their time. The space you left behind has turned into a vacuum that pulls them further and deeper into a whirlwind of obsession. They now look at the casual moments they used to ignore with the same respect that a scholar would give to hallowed books. They go over every conversation, looking too closely at every word and glance, trying to find a secret meaning that you never gave them. But you are no longer available. You are out of reach and can't be explained. The selected ones don't have to say anything to the people who didn't listen when it counted most. You are not a memory they can go back to whenever they want. You are a living, breathing force that is continuously changing, always going ahead, and can't be stopped. They don't really want to forget you since it would mean facing the most painful fact of all. They will never have another encounter like you again. They were drawn to more than just your presence. They were drawn to your divine energy. They sucked on it like spiritual parasites, living off your magnificent light without ever earning it or giving their own. But selected ones shouldn't be drained or turned into spiritual reservoirs for other people to use. You didn't leave them in the dark. You just took your light back. And in that moment of reclaiming, the unfiltered truth came out in a very clear way. They were never strong, whole, or able to take care of themselves. They got their strength from somewhere else. Their confidence was an illusion, a shimmering mirage made by the bright light of your spirit. Everything fell apart without you. The mask fell off, the cracks spread wide, and all the bad things about themselves that they had been able to hide now come to the surface and want to be seen. Your presence kept their inner lies intact and quietly brought order to their chaos. But when you left, the architect of their world fell apart. Now they wander aimlessly through the ruins, looking for another fix, another version of you, or another way to get that divine frequency. But nothing beats it. They reach out to echoes and shadows, to replacements that aren't quite right, hoping to bring back the magic that was lost. But the truth is harsh and unyielding. That reality only existed because you, in your grace, let it. What you gave so freely can't be copied. If this message is really hitting home for you, and you feel the truth of these words stirring something powerful inside you, you might want to subscribe to our channel, God Connection, to keep going on this journey of divine empowerment. Please help us keep this holy place full of truth and light. You can give $10 through the Super Thanks button below if you want to help this work even more. We can keep spreading this divine clarity to the people who need it most thanks to your energy and support. People who are chosen don't go back to what's broken. You don't go back to old, stagnant cycles or waste your time in energy-watering deserts that won't bloom. You don't care about the hunger of people who didn't eat when the food was put in front of them. Let them search forever, always looking for ghosts in other people's faces, because there is no one like you. There was never one. There will never be. You left completely, but now your absence is louder than your presence ever was. You made them want something they didn't want before, and now they're left wanting something that can't be duplicated. Because what you had wasn't from this world. It was heavenly. And divinity doesn't need to be understood, validated, or seen. You don't need to prove your worth to people who never saw it when they had you right in front of them. You don't need their approval anymore. You are not something that can be copied. You are out of reach. You are the norm, not the exception. And now, in the eerie quiet, they know it too. Now they are completely fascinated by the things they used to ignore, laugh at, or make fun of. They used to call those traits too much or too different, but now they can't stop thinking about them. The quiet they used to think was coldness or pride is now the most hauntingly beautiful sound they have ever heard. Your refusal to explain yourself, to lower your vibration for their limited understanding, to argue or defend your truth. It turned you into a mystery, a riddle wrapped in grace, a sacred enigma that their minds cannot solve. While they looked for closure, for another chance, for one final conversation, you gave them nothing. Because the chosen ones don't waste time explaining what was already made clear through their actions and their energy. You spoke through presence, through actions, through divine alignment, and they chose not to listen. And now your silence speaks louder than any words ever could. You did not need to chase anyone, because the chosen ones never chase. You withdrew. You observed. You moved in silence with the surgical precision of a spiritual master. And in that perfect distance, you were something they could never touch again. You became untouchable, ungraspable, an echo of a frequency their spirits can't forget, yet can no longer access. What formerly seemed comfortable and even expected to them has now changed into a disturbing enigma, a contradiction they can't understand. They felt they had you figured out, that they could read your emotions, foresee your next move, and control the narrative. But now, all they fully grasp is the terrible depth of their own error. And that knowledge alone is enough to undermine all they ever thought about power, connection, and control. They now sit in reflection, locked in an unending cycle of recollections, repeating every moment, every word, every look, hoping they could go back. They are anxious to rewrite the tale, believing that if they could only pinpoint the proper time, the exact point when everything switched, they may be able to undo what's already sealed by spiritual law. But what they don't grasp is this: the chosen ones do not depart because of one time. You don't evaporate with one error. You depart when the cycle has achieved its spiritual purpose, when the divine contract has ended, when your part in their development, unpleasant as it may be, has been finished. And once that exodus is made, it is irrevocable. There are no do-overs, no resets, no emotional discussions that may reverse the verdict of spiritual law. The door is locked tightly, and their regrets have become their permanent torture. You stop pursuing, and now they pursue ghosts. What they formerly viewed as a constant, a fixture in their existence, has now become a ghost, permanently out of grasp. Your departure wasn't gradual, it was seismic. It changed the electromagnetic field between you and them in a second. They never anticipated it because they were so certain, in their hubris, that your presence was permanent, something they could count on eternally. They assumed you would always be there, always accessible, always forgiving, always giving. But the selected ones are not predictable. You are not stationary. You are not built of the energy that tolerates being underappreciated. You do not stay where you are mistreated. You do not continue to share your light to those who prefer to stand in the darkness. Your absence has become a force in itself, a real strength that people sense but cannot touch. And while they attempt to pursue the version of you that no longer exists, you continue to climb, unshaken, unbothered, and untethered by their perplexity. What they don't understand is that your leave wasn't a retreat, it was a metamorphosis. You didn't simply walk away. You left a mark, a spiritual stamp, a subconscious impression that now molds their every thought. Your retreat constructed an invisible fortress, one they cannot approach, no matter how hard they try. You altered the spiritual architecture of the area you formerly shared. Now they reside in a world where you are no longer physically there, but your soul remains in every corner. Every room they enter whispers your name. Every stillness they experience is filled with your echo. They attempt to divert themselves, to move on, to fill the emptiness with noise and fresh faces. But nothing works, since your presence was never ordinary. It was fundamental. Your energy was not something they felt with their hands. It was something their spirit wrapped itself around for protection and security. And now that absence is not a vacuum, it is a presence. It rubs on their awareness like a persistent, gentle reminder of all they lost but never fully cherished. The more they attempt to forget you, the deeper they plunge into the pool of your energy. Every attempt to disconnect simply bonds them closer, since what you offered to them wasn't love alone. It was light. It was clarity. It was healing. And now, they are spiritually starved. They revisit the past not because they miss you, but because they are still trying to comprehend you, to decode the holy frequency that once engulfed their whole soul. But it's fruitless, since what people desire isn't a moment, a memory, or a version of you. What they're actually yearning for is the heavenly energy that emanated from you, the one that settled their disorder, the one they never possessed inside themselves. They didn't simply lose you. They lost the version of themselves that only existed in your presence, the stronger, wiser, more aligned version of themselves that your energy helped unveil. That is why their yearning isn't simply emotional, it's spiritual. And the anguish isn't for what was shared, but for what they will never, ever access again. Because you've evolved beyond them. You've risen beyond the point where they can reach. The selected ones do not regress. You don't return to cycles that have concluded. You don't rehash something you've already mastered. And no matter how hard they try, there is no door that leads back to you. They desire tranquility, not a reunion. They desire fullness, not a discussion. But the reality is that tranquility existed only in your company. And now it exists only in memory. And recollection, no matter how vivid, cannot replicate the divine. You are not a chapter they can revisit. You are the full book they never learned how to grasp. And now they are left to interpret the echoes of your energy in quiet, attempting to recall how it felt to stand in the light, just before the light chose to go away. Now they stand exposed, stripped raw in the aftermath of your departure, hurting for something they cannot identify and can never recapture. It's not only you they miss. It's not only your presence, your voice, or your touch. It's the mood you built, the spiritual protection you provided, the clarity your energy evoked without ever having to speak. They desire for a sensation, an alignment, a sense of completeness that existed only while you were around. And now that you're gone, nothing satisfies, nothing soothes, nothing compares. But the fact they must realize, no matter how terrible, is this: you were never theirs to own. You were never theirs to control, to retain, to bend. You were the hurricane that transformed them, the holy energy that entered their existence to awaken what had been dormant for centuries. You were not a person to be held on to. You were a change in awareness, a heavenly interruption to their idea of power. You didn't simply depart. They were transformed by your presence and are now permanently changed by your absence. And while they stay caught in the time capsule of what used to be, reliving events, repeating blunders, studying every quiet like a riddle with no answer, you've already gone onward, unfettered, unshaken, and absolutely unstoppable. They slide, obsessed by remorse and fantasy. You rise, anchored in purpose. They clutch at shadows. You stand in brightness. The selected ones do not collapse under the weight of distance. They become the very builders of it. You are the gravity that suddenly tugs at their soul, and they don't even realize why. While others seek to construct a life that no longer involves you, sewing it together with fake alternatives, you stay still and strong in your separation. Not because you're heartless, but because your heart is linked with a greater understanding. You never needed them. That's the reality that hurts the most, since they believed your strength was in your love for them, your commitment, your compassion. But now they understand. Your genuine strength was your ability to walk away without breaking. Your authority was never conditional. It was sovereign. The storm they now confront is not your revenge. It is their own consequence. It is the echo of disdain, the mirror of their negligence. And while they may scream out for another opportunity, another indication, another door, they know deep down that it's too late. The door didn't shut with wrath. It concluded with finality. Because the selected ones don't turn back after a lesson is learned. You weren't swayed by ego or animosity. You were relocated by alignment. Walking away was not weakness. It was holy strategy. It was wonderful timing. It was the product of a soul that grasped the unlimited significance of its own energy. You were not reacting. You were responding to the calm, relentless call of your higher self. The selected ones do not work amid turmoil. They perceive by spiritual indications, through heavenly confirmation. You didn't depart to make a point. You departed because your usefulness in that area had ended. And now they sit in the aftermath, not as victims, but as spectators to their own downfall. The void you left behind was not punishment. It was prophesied, a revelation of the truth that was always there, but never respected. They now realize what they refused to see when it mattered most, that you were the foundation, the anchor, the spiritual glue that kept it all together. They misunderstood your presence for permanency, your commitment for naivete, your quietness for reliance. But now that you're gone, the mask is off. Their image of power has broken, and what's left is the debris of their own spiritual carelessness. You were the framework they relied on, the anchoring force they abused without appreciation. And now, without you, everything falls apart. The more you center yourself in serenity, the more they melt in turmoil. They anticipated you to return. They anticipated your emotions to overpower your judgment. They hoped time and solitude would wear down your determination. But they didn't comprehend that selected ones don't shrink, they develop.
You are not suspended in time, waiting for things to make sense. You are not exploring the notion of reconnection. You are not linked to memory. You are free, and that freedom, that emotional and spiritual independence, is what scares them the most. Your separation isn't frigid. It's sacrosanct. It's clarity. It's the finest manifestation of self-love and spiritual growth. You're not looking back because there's nothing there for you anymore. The soil ceased growing long ago. The roots withered while you were still pouring water. And now you've gone away not in wrath, but in complete, tranquil acceptance. And that, more than anything, is what breaks them. You didn't smash the door. You simply stopped knocking. You didn't yell. You just got silent. And that quiet now thunders in their soul, louder than any argument ever could. You were never intended to dwell in a location that couldn't hold your development. You were never supposed to squander your light in places that honored your anguish but feared your might. And now that you've soared, they are left chasing ghosts. Ghosts of your voice, your energy, your presence. But ghosts don't come back. They linger just to remind. And the reminder is lasting. They lost something divine, something precious, something holy, and it will never be theirs again. They know it now, much too late, that the influence they imagined had over you was nothing but smoke and mirrors, a flimsy illusion kept together by your calm tolerance, your holy patience, and your grace. What they thought for influence was really stolen energy. It was the access you granted, the space you shared, not because they deserved it, but because your heart was open. And now that access has been withdrawn, nor with fury, nor with vengeance, but with serene, unwavering spiritual power. What previously was commonplace now seems distant. The presence they took for granted was never common. It was remarkable, holy, and unique. And now, while they wander through the aftermath, looking for purpose in a world that no longer incorporates your energy, you go onward, steady, grounded, invincible, and unstoppable. Your breakup wasn't merely a choice. It was a holy rupture. It ignited something they weren't prepared for, a full demolition of what they thought they understood about love, power, and presence.
You didn't depart gently. The chosen ones never do. You left behind a quiet that roars louder than any argument. You created a vacuum that doesn't merely leave space. It requires contemplation. In your absence, you pushed them to turn inside, to confront the darkness they previously buried beneath your light. Because when you departed, the whole balance altered. They could no longer depend on your energy, your emotional effort, your calm security. And at that moment, they were forced to face what they actually were without the security of your presence to hide behind. You were never simply someone in their life. You were a mirror, a heavenly representation of everything that was unresolved inside them. Every insecurity, every unhealed wound, every bit of themselves they refused to acknowledge. You mirrored it back with honesty and compassion. But instead of mending, they refused. Instead of acknowledging the gift, they disregarded it. And as you walked away, the illusions they wove around themselves started to crumble, thread by agonizing thread. What they previously overlooked now shouts at them in the quiet you left behind. What they previously laughed at, disregarded, or belittled now rings through their every thought. You don't have to talk for them to hear you now. Your absence is the voice. It is the instructor. It is the loudest reality they've ever encountered. The selected ones don't teach via wrath or loudness. They educate via presence and, even more effectively, through departure. Your absence became the curriculum of their awakening. Losing you was not simply a grief. It was a spiritual earthquake. It broke open the false pillars of their ego, their control, their superiority. You pushed them to recognize that they were never actually in control of anything. The existence they established while depending on your energy is now unstable, and their spirit knows it. Because you weren't simply a presence. You were the pulse, the unseen structure keeping it all together. And suddenly the world they once believed was secure and predictable is cold, unfamiliar, and empty. You were the oddity, the one they couldn't foresee, the energy they couldn't recreate. And now, in your absence, they are left with just themselves. No more diversions, no more projections, no more illusions to hide behind. The diversions that formerly stopped them from confronting the reality no longer suffice. The individuals they use to attempt to replace you with don't fill the space you formerly inhabited. Nothing strikes the same. Nothing feels entire. Because you didn't just take yourself when you left. You took back your light, your vibration, your precious energy. And without it, they're left gazing at the ruins of everything they disregarded. They felt they could determine the parameters of your interaction, thinking they had the upper hand. But the selected ones are never constrained by false authority. Your disappearance wasn't simply a break. It was a doorway, a cosmic shift on a higher terrain. You didn't leave because you were furious. You departed because your soul had outgrown the place. Your task was complete. The karmic obligation had been paid. The spiritual contract had ended. You didn't depart emotionally. You exited with heavenly harmony. You were never there to stay. You were sent to shift, to activate, to awaken. And after it was done, your time there was ended. And now, when they sit in the ashes of their own decisions, they finally recognize you for what you always were. The storm, the sanctuary, the divine lesson. They never expected you to depart. They imagined your benevolence equaled permanency. They misinterpreted your steadiness for dependency. They assumed they would always have access to you. But the selected ones don't stay in human form forever. Their effects do. You didn't depart to hurt them. You departed because you couldn't stay there with them while they were stuck. Staying doesn't always demonstrate love. Distance may sometimes indicate how much you love someone. And your remoteness says a lot. It says, I gave you what I could. I showed you who I am. I honored you with my truth. And now, I must honor myself. You don't need closure because you are the closure. Your silence has revealed the whole tale, so you don't need to say anything. They felt that not being there would make you less important, but it really made you more powerful. It left a deeper mark on their souls than you ever did. They can feel you in the silent, lonely hours, in their dreams, in their waking thoughts, and in the emptiness of every contact that doesn't compare to you. They felt they could go on without being hurt. They felt they could find someone else like you. But now they get it. You are the exception, the model, the perfect example. And whatever they come across today is terribly disappointing. They attempt to patch the gap by replacing, copying, and resetting, but nothing works. You weren't simply another chapter. You were the whole story. You weren't just something they went through. You were a part of who they were. That portion is gone now. You aren't a memory. You're a person. You are not a memory. You are a power. And here's what hurts the most. They love you more now than they ever did when they had you. Not because they've become smarter, but because they now comprehend what they lost. But knowing doesn't give you access. Realization does not reopen the door. The chosen ones do not circle back. You don't go through cycles, you grow. And now you've moved into a zone so far above their frequency that they can only watch from a distance. They could want you. They might be obsessed with you. They might hurt, but you are beyond of reach. And so, it's the last big transfer of power. Nor anger, nor retribution, but going beyond. The unassailable knowledge that you've soared into your higher timeline, unaffected by the echoes of their remorse. They can't get to your light, knowledge, or love anymore, not because you closed your heart, but because they never respected it while it was open. The selected ones do not wait for plaudits. They don't stop to be recognized. They just become what others can only dream of, and then they go on. So now is the moment to tell your tale, not to prove anything, but to illuminate the road for others. Let the world experience what it genuinely looks like to rise from the stillness, to walk away from what doesn't grow, to regain your divine nature without ever asking for permission. Not out of wrath, but out of strength, purpose, and deep serenity. Let them know what occurs when a chosen one declares, "I am done." This is what God Connection is all about. If this trip has touched you, make sure you subscribe to the channel and share this video with anybody who needs to hear this important message. We want to hear about your path of waking because it is significant. Please leave a comment below to tell us how you are getting ready for your own victorious return to yourself. And if you feel compelled to support this precious cause, to help us develop more material that gives truth, light, and divine clarity to a world in great need, then consider making a gift using the Super Thanks button. A $10 donation, or any amount, helps us promote God's message and provide hope to others. No donation is too little. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity supports our work. And do not let your trip end here. Watch our next video for profound insights on the signals that indicate you are a chosen one. Thank you for sharing this spiritual journey with us. Keep shining brightly and face your heavenly destiny with steadfast confidence. God Connection sends blessings to all lovely people.